Now, if you guys couldn't already tell, I like open world games a little bit. They're my favorite genre of video games, and this genre has seen some of the best video games ever made, like Cyberpunk, The Witcher 3, and Elden Ring. And I remember back in 2020 when Ghost of Tsushima came out, I saw gameplay videos of it and thought it looked pretty damn cool. I mean, a game set in Japan really did pique my interest and intrigue me a lot, and when the game came out, I never played it. And since 2020, I've heard nothing but great things about this game. And recently, I was in the boat of looking for a fun open world RPG video game to sink my teeth into. Now, I know by the title of this video, it seems like I'm just going to be shitting on this game for the entire video, which that's not the case. I understand when you see a title like this next to your favorite video game, you're going to naturally get defensive, which is okay because I do the same thing. And I know that there's going to be people disagreeing with me, which is okay. Now, when I say that Ghost of Tsushima is overrated, that's not me saying that the game is bad, because it's definitely not a bad game. It does a lot right, and I even think this game was nominated Game of the Year back in 2020 when it came out. I just don't think this game is on the level of some of the other games that we've seen on PlayStation, like God of War. When I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, I couldn't really get into like a groove. I kept finding myself playing the game for about an hour and then getting bored and playing a different game. For me, I just feel like this game is missing something that is holding me and other players back from getting addicted to. And before we dive deep into this game's problems, I'll get all my positives of the game out the way really quickly. Starting with the combat. Ghost of Tsushima's combat is good. Probably the best I've played since I played, I don't know, Sleeping Dogs. I'm sure a lot of other gamers can relate to this. I hate how in a lot of other games, the combat is, it's not terrible, but it feels like such a secondary mechanic and just not fleshed out enough. I love how in Ghost of Tsushima you have so many different combos that you can use, and every enemy you go against, you can't just always use the exact same combo over and over and over. You have to always keep changing it up. Getting a kill in this game feels smooth and satisfying. Like you've earned the kill and it wasn't just given to you. And another very cool thing that I love about this game's combat is the standoffs. Very similar to Red Dead Redemption, instead of duels with revolvers, you go against enemies with a Uchigatani. And just like doing a duel, you hold down triangle, and you have to hold it down and then release it right as they go for the attack. And it makes for these really cool ass slow motion deaths. This usually happens when you enter enemy territory, and you can either decline the standoff and just go fight all the enemies immediately, but I always accept it because standoffs are just so damn cool. And I know this might sound weird, but I also love the parrying in this game. I don't know, it's probably because I played Elden Ring, because comparing this to Elden Ring's parrying, it's not even close. It's so much better. I will say though, the more I played the game, the more the combat started to feel a little bit repetitive. Like the combat started to feel a little bit too easy for me because I'm just like so good. No, just with any game, the more you master the combat, the more it's going to feel a little bit repetitive. But although it was feeling a little bit repetitive the more I got into the game, it never really bored me to death. I would always look forward to any sort of combat interaction, because for me in a way, this is one of the biggest highlights of this game. And as for the combat being great in my eyes, I'm not really a huge fan of this game's stealth, which may come to a surprise because a lot of other people are a fan of this game's stealth. And you're probably saying, what's wrong with the stealth? It's like every other game in existence. But I hate how, and it's not just Ghost of Tsushima, I don't exactly love how stealth in pretty much every single AAA game in the last like 8 years is such a secondary focus. It feels like a secondary mechanic, and it's clearly secondary in the marketing. Ghost of Tsushima stealth is so easy and never once felt intense in any scenario. I don't think I ever had a moment where I was actually feeling a little bit nervous while I was doing stealth. You can literally sprint past like 5 guards, and the only indication that they heard it is a little bar that only goes up depending on how long they saw you for. So basically, you can be in plain sight and they can literally be staring at you, but if you take cover quickly enough, they'll act like they just didn't see anything, which to me is a little lame. Or if you kill someone, they'll walk around, see the dead body, and like every game with a generic stealth mechanic, they'll alert a few other guards, which I guess is the game's way of them being on high alert. But their high alert isn't them going around and checking every single hiding spot. They'll walk around and then go back to doing nothing. Like, how much more tense would this be if the guards weren't completely deaf and could hear you assassinating someone? Considering you can murder someone literally 2 feet behind another guard and somehow they don't hear that, or if they could see your footprints in the ground and can track them, that would be pretty interesting. I mean, Jesus Christ, even Metal Gear Solid recall, it had this feature where guards could see your footprints and track them, which, by the way, the game came out in 1998. Or if guards didn't have dumb AI, it could use a little bit of common sense. Or even worse, sometimes the guards will spot me and then chase me around for a few seconds, but then I can lose them by just hiding somewhere and they won't check any hiding spots. They'll just forget about it and go back to doing nothing, which is not realistic in the slightest. And again, it's not just Ghost of Tsushima, it's just a trend that I see in a lot of AAA games now. Just stealth nowadays has become less of a genre and more of just a little watered down mechanic to throw into a game to change it up a little bit. Though, even though that I did just criticize the stealth in this game, I do have to give Sucker Punch props for getting the horseback riding down in this game. Pretty much every game besides Red Dead Redemption 2, horseback riding has always been a rough mechanic. Now, I'm not a video game developer, so I don't really know how hard or what the complications are for horseback riding in games, but I would assume that it's pretty difficult. And coming out from Elden Ring, this is a huge step up. It's obviously not perfect, it does feel a little clunky at times. Like, for example, there's not a specific jump button for your horse, which is very bizarre. But for a game that isn't specifically revolved around horses, I am very impressed and actually really do appreciate for how well they did it. I can get from point A to B in a smooth ride. But like what I said about Elden Ring, I wish we could customize our horses. I wish we could have more interaction and bond with them more. I just hate how in a lot of games that use horseback riding, our horses just feel like a vehicle to get us from place to place, which, I mean, they are, but I would like to have the feature where I could like feed my horse and have a much bigger connection with them. A little nitpicky, but other than that, it's good. And lastly, I have to of course give props for Sucker Punch for actually seeing what other players hate in RPG video games and cleaning it up tremendously. User interface. My goodness, there's literally nothing on your screen, and the only thing that pops up is your health bar. And even then, I didn't even notice it because it's tiny as shit in the bottom left corner. I hate when games just clutter the crap out of your screen with all this shit like Dragon's Dogma 2. Having literally every text on your screen explained out, while also having all these pop-ups, it just makes it a mess. Just cut the fat and just show off your beautiful looking world. I don't know why that's so hard for games to do. Ghost of Tsushima's user interface is so minimal until you actually need it, and it really lets you get immersed into the game and absorb the world even more. And even just navigating through the menus to upgrade my skills, change my armor or weapons is so easy and doesn't take me long at all. And I hate that Elden Ring is catching so many strifts, but Elden Ring's UI and UX design just confuses the shit out of me sometimes. It's so unnecessarily complicated and convoluted for just the sake of it, which I don't really understand why. So Sucker Punch, good job on that. And I really hope games, and especially these open world RPG games, could take inspiration from Ghost of Tsushima, because you may think that it makes your game look more detailed by having all this shit on your screen, which to an extent it does, but players hate having all this nonsense cluttered on their screen while they're trying to do one simple thing like change their cape. But besides that, I think those were my main highlights of the game that I found during my playthrough, and in my opinion what I think this game does so good at. Because in my opinion, this game can be quite a slog to get through, and that mainly has to do with this game's quests and side quests. I hate to say this, but Ghost of Tsushima's main quests were cool at first, but at like the 2-hour mark, they just bored the hell out of me. They're not engaging in the slightest. They almost feel like I'm doing the exact same thing over and over and over. And at first I thought it was just me having a crappy attention span, so I kept doing them to see if I was doing something wrong or if I was missing something about them. But I looked it up online and everyone is saying the same thing. It's not fun and they're tedious. It's always cutscene, follow someone, whether that be following track or following someone at a snail's pace, attack a horde of enemies by sneaking around or just going straight in, steal something, and then the quest is complete. And doing that over and over and over and over for 30 hours is not really that fun. And I've said this before, I don't like using the word lazy when it comes to like video game development, because game dev is a lot of fucking work. Because I know a lot of people who aren't game developers always call video game developers lazy, which I don't think is really justified. I just think they could have done something a little bit more creative than just doing the same thing over and over and over, because all this feels like is just filler content to fill this game's hours, which this game took me 30 hours to beat, and I'd say about 5 of those hours were interesting to me. And you know, I don't want to play a 30-hour kind of interesting game, because that's just where players are just gonna tap out, especially once I got to Act 2. When I got to Act 2, that was a struggle for me to get through. It's just so much monotonous, boring ass, mediocre gameplay that is just trying to fill up this game's hours. And with no bias, if I wasn't making this video about Ghost of Tsushima, I probably would have just tapped out and stopped playing this game entirely, because it really felt like I was just trying to just force myself to get through this campaign. I also have to say, the side quests are so boring and there is like no incentive to play them. Just like how I said about the main quest, I enjoyed like the first 2 side quests where I had to save a bunch of people from fighting a bunch of Mongos, but after that, it felt like I was doing the same thing over and over and over. Like, I wouldn't say that they're completely identical, like they are a little bit different, but they're very uncreative and feel like they were just thrown into the game as a classic Ubisoft checkbox to make sure that there's extra stuff to do in the game, which I don't want to compare this game to Ubisoft, but it does a lot of things that Ubisoft does, just uncreative side activities to just make sure that you can do other stuff in the game besides main missions. And I try to take a break from doing the quest and see what this game's open world has to offer, because I mean, it is a big ass world and looks amazing visually, but unfortunately Ghost of Tsushima's map falls victim to looking pretty but remaining very surface level. Like, I was just shocked at how massive the map is, but how empty and how there's barely anything interesting to do in it. Like, oh, I can pick up plants. How fun. Which was quite disappointing because I'm someone who loves a really good open world map that is really detailed and has a lot of stuff to do in it. And I hate to keep bringing this up, but when I played Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that came out in 2018, still to this day it is just in a league of its own and on a whole nother level. And to an extent, it's kind of unfair to keep comparing this to Ghost of Tsushima, but still, its open world is the most well handcrafted map I've ever seen in a video game. There's so much stuff to do, like hunting, fishing, having these random ass encounters with NPCs that you can actually talk to and feel like they're real people, and just so much fun stuff to do. But when I play Ghost of Tsushima, its open world just doesn't interest me at all. It just feels so generic, and you can't even interact with any NPCs unless it's to start a quest, and the wildlife is also very underwhelming. There's just such a lack of diversity with the animals, and I started suffering from open world fatigue. I don't know if I just made that up, but it's when the open world of the game gives you the illusion that there's a bunch of exploration that you can do, but really there's like nothing to do in it. Like, remember how in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the map spans across like 3 countries or 3 regions, but there's like nothing to do. I think Ghost of Tsushima's map is smaller than Red Dead Redemption 2's map, but it works in Red Dead 2's favor because it is just loaded with hidden content that you as a player have to explore for yourself. But I will give this game credit though, I do appreciate how this game doesn't have a minimap with a waypoint telling you exactly where you're supposed to go, but instead having the wind guide you. So when setting a marker for where you're traversing to, the wind is directing you the whole way through without a minimap. I just thought it was a really unique way of guiding the player than having a waypoint that reveals exactly what path you're supposed to go to and basically reveals every puzzle to you. But other than that, having a big map isn't automatically going to make your open world interesting to explore. If it was a little bit smaller, then it probably wouldn't feel like a chore for exploration. Like, have they not seen Sleeping Dogs? It is a tiny ass map but offers so much content and stuff to do that is actually fun. I think like one of the most interesting things that I've seen that people have said online is that Ghost of Tsushima feels like a glorified Ubisoft game. Like, it's not terrible, and I feel like people are gonna think I'm saying the game is crap because I'm referring it to Ubisoft, but this game has its bright moments where it really shines, but everything else, like the really generic empty open world and the repetitive mission designs, it makes it feel really shallow and a slog to get through. I never once had a genuine moment where I was really just locked into this game, or exactly like fell in love with the game. There were times when I was like, oh wow, this game's really good, but those just evaporate instantly when I realize, oh, I'm back to doing these boring ass missions of me just following someone, killing a few enemies, rinse and repeat for 30 hours with a very mundane open world that only looks pretty, and you're telling me that it doesn't get any better and this is the entire gameplay loop? Oh no. And I know this next part might sound very nitpicky, but can we also mention how weird and odd the facial animations look? I don't know if it was just my game, but all of the characters' faces have this weird emotionless states 24/7. Like, they aren't showing any sort of emotion when they speak. Like, if you were to mute the dialogue and turn off the subtitles, I wouldn't be able to tell if they were happy, mad, or sad.
お主それでも侍か己が俺が話を聞いてみよう口出しするでないぞ
Like, I think even Uncharted 3 had better facial animations, which that game came out in 2011. So I'm just not really sure why this game that came out in 2020 has such lackluster facial animations and expressions. Also, what the hell is wrong with this game's cutscenes? Like 85% of Ghost of Tsushima's cutscenes are like these wide angle shots of all the characters with no animations, making it look like those PS2, PS3 cutscenes. And just even the animations during the cutscenes aren't even that good looking. For some reason, during cutscenes, your FPS drops considerably more than when you're actually in gameplay, making them look pretty bad. And I would also argue that this game has too many cutscenes for its own sake. Now this may be a personal preference, but you know, I get that cutscenes are used to progress through the story. If you didn't have any cutscenes in video games, then you wouldn't know what the hell was going on. But Ghost of Tsushima takes it a little bit too far by having cutscenes appear every 30 seconds when they don't need to be in place. Like clearing out enemy territory, cutscene, or cutscene to talk to this person so we can go ride our horses, and then another cutscene when we get there, and then once we finish killing them, cutscene. Like, they occur at moments when the developers could have just added in-game dialogue between the characters, then just thrown in these long unskippable cutscenes. And again, some people don't have an issue with this. I just think that there's a much better way to go about it than just throwing in these cutscenes to do this one simple thing. But what about the story? Everyone talks about how captivating and compelling the writing of this game is. It's good, you know, I'm not gonna say that it's the most groundbreaking story they've ever seen, but it does have some solid writing. And I feel like Ghost of Tsushima being set in Japan really worked out in the game's favor. Because Japan is, well, just better. From all the different characters, the world, the soundtrack, and just the entire vibe of the game really just sticks with fans more. But for me, the story just didn't really grab me that much, or even touch me that much like I think it was intended to. I will say though, I really do love the cinematics of this game. It's definitely one of the more cinematic games that I've ever played, especially that opening cutscene. I mean, it is really beautiful. I mean, come on, you can't tell me that you didn't get goosebumps from that. But just when I eventually beated the game, I felt alright, considering that I didn't have to spend a single penny for this game. Got it with PS Plus. And I know this game is really targeted for casual players who don't have a whole lot of time in their day to play video games, and aren't people like me who can literally just play hundreds of hours a week and have no life. But when I completed the final mission, I just had a gamer moment where I just felt like, yeah, I think I'm done with this game for a while. As in, I would so much rather be playing / doing something else. I just feel like nowadays people will just call anything a masterpiece because it can do a few things really good and act like there's nothing wrong with the game. And you know how people always want a second part to a beloved game? Like Bully, Bully 2, Sleeping Dogs 2, Mad Max 2, and a lot of people want a Ghost of Tsushima 2. And if they were to make a second part to this game, I just really hope they go back and look at the game and pinpoint exactly what makes this game such a slog to get through. Because there is just so much stuff that they need to get rid of in this game. But with that being said, thank you all for watching to the end of this video. Thank you all so much for the support again, it really means a lot to me. Feel free to leave any game suggestions in the comment sections below. I do have some games that I am really excited to cover and show you guys, so stay tuned for that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya.